if you wasn't training Ryan Garcia,
If I wasn't.
what advice would you give him from a mental standpoint in preparation to go inside of the ring with Gervonta Davis?
Well, I am training Ryan, so if I did divulge that, I'd be giving away some trade secrets right now. So,
All right, thanks, Joe.
Right, but you always put it, and I do that every time I wrap my own hands to make sure. So I love.
oh yeah,
This
yeah.
is a master at work right here. This is an artist. Watch what he does. He turns these things into a work of art. Like
We with the legendary Joe Goosen. Joe, you have an upcoming fight coming up with well, not you yourself, but with Ryan Garcia, Tank Davis. How do what is the mental preparation that you go through in order to get prepared for these types of fights? You've been in a lot of these types of big fights throughout your career as a trainer. What say you about the mental preparation that you have to go through as a trainer?
Well, yeah, there is a mental preparation, not like the fighter would do, because they get very intense, very focused. They can get a little edgy because they're losing weight, and then they're the warriors. So my intensity is more on doing all the right things. So my focus is, centered on the right sparring, the right amount of rounds, the right running, just everything that encompasses a training camp going into an event like this has to be run, very efficiently. And so that's something that I focus on. And if I'm intense about anything, it's about that. I let the fighter do the real intensity, which is, because he's the one going into the battle. Yeah. I'm going to be coordinating it in the gym and then ultimately in the ring, in the corner. And so, the other thing is that when you're in the gym all day, like I am with the other fighters that's apart and aside from Ryan, and then I've got about an hour and a half break before then Ryan starts his workouts later on in the evening to 2 hours. When you're in the gym all the time, you're just immersed in it. It keeps you focused because your whole train of thought is focused on every fighter you're working with. So you're just inundated with boxing. And, that kind of keeps you focused and on your toes about what you have to do ultimately with each one of these guys. But Ryan's fight, look, this is a huge fight. It's one of the biggest fights to come around the corner for a while. So like I say, sometimes when you turn on that switch, you don't want to turn it on too early either, even for me. Kind of wait till you get, I've often said I wait until I make that walk into the arena before I turn the switch on and go into another mode. But for the fighters like Ryan and Tank, that this is something that weighs on them every day. They know they are the ones that are going to go in and fight it out. So the intensity level is, I'm sure, psychologically very.
A lot has been made about from Ryan and just other people about the weight. Do you foresee that being an issue with the weight cut and the rehydration and stuff like that for this fight as it relates to Ryan Garcia's performance?
Did I feel that if we fought Tank Davis that we were going to ultimately have to come down to basically the weight he fights at? Is that the question you're asking?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I did. I mean, we knew Tank went up, I think was for the Barrios fight. He went up to 140. I don't know if he ever went up to 140 aside and apart from that fight. But, look, I mean, I think he came in at under 35 in a couple of fights, maybe even his last fight against Garcia. Was it Hector Garcia?
Yeah, Hector Garcia.
Hector Garcia. He may have weighed 34 point something. So, he's a shorter fighter. He's put together good. But, yeah, I think ultimately he is natural lightweight, and where Ryan, and remember Tank's up there in his late 20s, where Ryan will be turning 25 this August, and So, you know, he's young and still growing. I mean, if you look at Ryan, his height,
Yeah.
he's a big guy. He looks like a lot of welterweights. And I think eventually, like, you know, Oscar De La Hoya, you know, ended up as a welterweight, junior middleweight. I could foresee that with Ryan. He's got the physique for it. So making this weight, yeah, it's he's already down really well right now. It's amazing.
Yeah, he looked good. He looked good.
And we have about a month left. Today's the 23rd. So the fight's on the 22nd. We got about a month. And that is a good thing for what I know his weight to be right now.
Right.
We're way ahead of the game on the weight issue.
How do you feel about fighters being more active fighting in the ring? You've been training a long time. You train some of the most world-class, you train a lot of world-class fighters. You've been in a lot of big fights. In today's time, it seems a lot of these younger fighters, they don't fight as much.
Yeah.
I've heard stuff like, you know, where the old school fighters are all brain dead and brain damage, and the younger fighters today, they don't have to go through what the older fighters have to go through. But what say you about that? Do you feel that the younger fighters or the fighters in today's time need to be more active in boxing, you know, instead of fighting once a year or whatever?
That's a great question. That's a great question. Now, and it's a tough one to answer. Now, do I think that the fighters of yesteryear that I kind of came up with, they fought a lot more? Yes, there's no doubt about it. Some 70, 80, 90 fights,
Yeah.
you know, some over 100. But the thing is that they gave you a lot of early 4-rounders. So you just didn't go from 4-rounders to 10-rounders quickly. You could have, you know, 15 4-round fights or more. Move you up to 6, then maybe to 8, and then 10-rounders. It was a learning experience. That's you know, that was worth something. You really got a lot of experience, and you know, by the time you were, let's say, you know, your record was good enough and your abilities were good enough to fight for a championship, you know, you were pretty well schooled. And you know, now guys have title fights, 24, 25, 28 fights. I mean, that happened back then as well, but not too often. Look, it's a damaging sport, and the more times you get hit, the worse it is for you. So again, I appreciated the old school days. I was part of it. I lived through it. I enjoyed it. Met a lot of great fighters. Saw some of the most thrilling fights ever. But it's a new era. It's the way they do it now. You got to be able to adapt. I'm all for the safety of fighters. It's a brutal sport. So it is what it is, and I don't protest it. I just work within the boundaries of what it is today. But it is different than it was 20, 30, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. Mm-hmm. You know, I started in the 70s. They had 15-round fights back then. Yeah. They didn't stop fights that readily. You know, if you got cut, you know, it wasn't as, you know, they weren't as, let's just put it this way, they didn't stop them as quickly when you got cut back in the 60s, 70s. There was a lot of things that are different about it. So, yeah, it's a different day, but I'm not against it. I'm not against it.
Joe, thank you so much for taking the time out. You know, good luck on the upcoming fight.
Thank you.
Ryan Garcia. Mentally, he seems like he locked in. He's with a great trainer, phenomenal trainer yourself. You've been in the game for a long time.
Yes.
You've seen some of the best fights, the biggest. You've seen it all. Any advice, if you wasn't training Ryan Garcia?
If I wasn't.
What advice would you give him from a mental standpoint in preparation to go inside of the ring with Gervonta Davis?
Well, I am training Ryan, so if I did divulge that, I'd be giving away some trade secrets right now. So,
all right, thanks, Joe. Joe, thank you so much. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Man, I'm out of here, bro. Let's go.